Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Chelsea, if you didn't already know. I'm an illustrator from Melbourne who is sitting on a ridiculously squeaky chair right now that is not... Oh, no, there it is. It's doing its bit. Today I'm talking to you about something that is quite close and dear to my heart. It is about saying no to potential clients and just opportunities that might come your way when you're freelancing or illustrating in general. I'd like to start just by giving you guys a heads up. I am in no way an expert. This is just based on things that I have experienced and I know that others have experienced. And you know, if you want to take on every single illustration opportunity that comes your way, I am in no way stopping you. It is all free will, baby, and you can do what you like. I'm just telling you from my experience, sometimes it is good to hold in that little inner cynic of yours and be like, is this really an amazing opportunity for me? I don't know. That's when you get to play detective a little bit. I'd like to start this by talking about how to get to the point where you're getting commissions or requests or inquiries, because I watch a lot of this sort of stuff, like Illustrators talking about their approach or their experiences. And when I was first starting, it was really annoying to watch illustrators who were talking about commissions and inquiries they would get, and I would be sitting there in my dingy studio going, well, how the fuck did they get commissions? How the fuck did they get clients? How the fuck did they get that? And I'm sorry for all the swearing, I care about this subject a lot, and I was a very angsty newbie to the illustration game. I'm just going to give you a rundown of what I do currently, like in the last 12 to 18 months that has really worked and gotten me inquiries and commissions and just general interest in what I do. This is going to sound really simple, but bear with me, I'm going to break it down under this. Work hard. I'm sure if you're passionate about illustration like I am, working hard is just something you're gonna do because you really care about this. But you'd be surprised at how many people just expect people to flock to them with no information. So there are things you can do to present the fact that you're a hard worker. This includes making content that you love. I make these YouTube videos because I like to, not because YouTube is paying me to, or because anyone aside from my patrons is really paying me to. I just like doing it. It's my thing. Also, share your stuff on social media. If you love drawing cats, draw all the cats you could ever want and then put them on Instagram or put them on Facebook or put them on a blog or whatever you want. You don't have to have every single form of social media. Just have one decent social media and stick to it. It's also good to have a little bit of a social media strategy, but that might be something you develop later on. I know I didn't do that straight away. Create stuff, and this one is what pretty much everyone tells you when you want to start getting commission work, but commission yourself. Do the thing that you really want to do. If you like drawing Superman with a beard that goes down to his knees, or you want to do a series of superheroes with insane facial hair, do that, because no one is going to commission you to do that right off the bat. You have to make people see what you can do and what you would like to be doing, and doing stuff that you enjoy will in turn lead to commissions that you will probably enjoy. I know I sound like a broken record because a lot of other people say this as well, but it totally works. So do that, please. Another thing is just to test your abilities and play. I think the biggest thing that I did when I got out of art school, as I've said before, is I just kept experimenting with art. I kept playing with mediums and testing my abilities and really challenging myself, and it made all the difference to my abilities with drawing and just style and everything. It impacts everything. Eventually, doing all that stuff will lead to a social media following. It will lead to people being interested in your work and contacting you. This could mean you're getting private commissions from people you know, or just individuals, not companies necessarily, or organizations or anything like that. Or you could get a major company email you and say, hey, we like your stuff, can you do this for us? And that's amazing. But the thing you need to remember is you do not want to get exploited, which brings me to part number 2. Know your shit and then know your worth. If you are getting noticed by people, that means your hard work is totally paying off. You're getting inquiries, you might be getting messages on social media. I know for me, a lot of my inquiries come from Facebook messages or Instagram messages. I get emails too, things like that. And sometimes I just have to filter through the bullshit. So a thing that really helps me is knowing my shit, knowing what legally I have to do and legally what a client has to do. There are a heap of questions you can ask yourself about the client that you're being presented with or who has approached you, but before I get into that, I just want to talk to you about how you can like get yourself to a level where you do know your shit and where you do know your worth. In order to know your shit, you need to read a lot. When I first broke out of my parents' lovely garage studio for myself and got this beautiful little slightly overpriced apartment, I immediately thought, shit, if I'm really going to do this, I need to know about the industry. I need to know how to write a contract or what to look out for in a contract if I'm given one, and I need to know my rights. I need to know so much stuff. So I started buying books, some really good books. So some of the stuff that just off the top of my head, and this is totally going to overwhelm you if you're new to illustration and you're really considering it as a career, this is just some of the stuff you need to know about. You need to know about the types of jobs that are available within illustration. So that could include editorial work, or that could mean commercial stuff like fabrics or pattern making, or it could mean like product design stuff, it could mean books, it could mean like art practice like galleries and prints, limited prints and things like that. You need to know about licenses, you need to know about contracts, you need to know about copyright and intellectual property. That is a big one. Really fucking important. I know I sound like a hyperactive chipmunk right now, but trust me, so important. You need to know your T's and C's, and you need to understand the client's T's and C's. If you're not sure what I mean, T's and C's are terms and conditions. It's very good to have a set of your own. You need to know about the types of clients or commissions that you might be approached with. You also need to understand how you prefer to be paid or what your payment conditions are. Those are just some of the really terrifying adulty things you need to remember and understand and learn about. I got a lot of my information from two amazing books. Becoming a Successful Illustrator by Derek Brazel and Joe Davies. Such a lifesaver. I read this cover to cover when I first started going into freelance illustration quite seriously. It has all the information you could ever need. It talks about self-promotion, it talks about what kind of work you can do, it talks about how to secure work, it talks about the difference between working in an agency setting or working for yourself. It has so much information, like, oh, so good. I'm pretty sure both of these people used to work for the Association of Illustrators, which is a UK-based organisation. They help illustrators with any inquiries, all their rights. They are like top dog. They know all their shit. It is so helpful. So I highly recommend checking them out as well. I will leave links to all this stuff below, and I promise I will. I say that and then I totally forget to do it. This time, 100% going to. They've both been board members on the Association of Illustrators, so they really do know their shit. And this is a really good way to get a thorough understanding as well as an overview of the illustration community and as a career. Like, there are so many things you should know about going into illustration as a career. This book will give you all that info. If you want to go a bit deeper into the legalities and all the stuff that is totally scary but you desperately have to know, The Illustrator's Guide to Law and Business by the Association of Illustrators is amazing. It is based on British laws and regulations. However, you can totally find your own government's regulations and policies on anything in this book just by going to your government's website. That's what I did with all my Australian stuff, and it's quite easy for me because Australia is within the Commonwealth of Britain, so we're not too dissimilar. But this book, I still refer to it to this day. If I get a commission for someone and I think to myself, oh yay, commission, woohoo, my mind immediately goes blank about what kind of licensing I'm meant to provide them with or what my contract terms should be. This gives me everything. Absolutely everything. They even have a template for your terms and conditions that you can read over and get a general understanding of why you need like XYZ in your conditions. So I strongly recommend this. There's another book that Kendyll Hillegas suggested and I desperately want to read it. I can't for the life of me remember what it's called. If you're an American watching this, it pertains to a lot of the American regulations and laws and policies with working freelance. I will leave the image of it here Sorry, my chair just squeaked. It's here for your viewing pleasure, and I will leave a link to it on Amazon below. I'm very desperate to read that. It's on my buy book lists once I can afford to. The only other thing that I can really suggest in order to know your shit is to just learn from experience. And I know that's a shit thing to say, but honestly, the first commission I ever did, there was no contract, there was no payment terms or anything. It was like, I got paid. Don't get me wrong, I got paid. But I would never operate business like that now. And yeah, it really helped me understand when to say no, because I was doing stuff that I didn't want to do, or I was doing stuff at a much cheaper rate than I was meant to. Which leads on to knowing your worth. Once you know your shit, you will know your worth. This includes knowing how much to charge. This is a tricky one for every single illustrator, but you'll get a more general understanding as you do more commissions and as you learn from the process of writing contracts and taking on small clients. There's no good way to learn what's a shit client and what's a good client until you kind of do it sometimes, which I know is such a cop-out, and I do have proper information coming up for you about how to say no and how to be like, this is not what I want to do. In the first few stages, let yourself make mistakes. Obviously don't sign away your copyright or anything like that, but you know, to start with, you're probably going to be working for family and friends, or you're going to be working with just people you know personally, and that definitely makes it easier to make mistakes, if there's any way for making mistakes to be easy. Another thing that helps with potential commissions and clients is knowing your market. That can come from doing events like fairs and festivals and stalls, or selling online. Selling online is actually amazing because that's where I make most of my profit for illustration. So a lot of the time I don't deal with clients and commissions too often. That is partially because at this point in time I'm not putting myself out there too. That's changing this year, but nonetheless my Etsy store and my Patreon are my main forms of illustration income. So there are other options if you don't want to be a commissioned illustrator necessarily and you would rather be doing self-published stuff, but you still need to know your shit. Sorry, you still need to know your shit. You'll also figure out how long your work takes you to do. That is super important in understanding how much to charge and just generally how much your time is valuable. I have done commissions for people before that have expected me to take 2 hours to draw something that would usually take me 5 hours. And as I said before, just practice and experiencing those commissions helps you understand that. Another thing to really think about when you know your worth is, where do you want to be? Do you want to be an editorial illustrator? Do you want to be making fabric designs and selling them to high-end commercial clients? This is stuff that you will find out when you know your shit. And this is stuff that you will be able to work towards in making your own work and, you know, putting it online and doing that process of working hard, and also from the type of clients that you will attract. So now we move on to when to say no. If you didn't know, I published a zine back in January called Made in Victoria. It looks like this and I'm very proud of it, and you can find it on my Etsy store. I will leave a link below. But I made that back in January because I wanted to capture all my favourite buildings in Victoria, and I recently got an inquiry to sell that wholesale. Red flags were immediately flying for me. And there were some questions that I always tend to ask when I get an inquiry or a commission request that I was immediately asking myself when I saw this email from this complete stranger. The first thing I looked at was, does this person or company work with artists regularly? Now, the email I got said that they had website problems, so the website was currently down, therefore they didn't have any real information or examples to show me. So I social media stalked them, and they didn't really work with any artists. So I was immediately a bit like, that's going to be tricky. Second thing was, what is their budget? Nothing in the email alluded to that, and it was a question I could have asked, but I will go into why I didn't in a moment. Are they a legitimate business? Now, I should have started with this, but we're just going to pretend that it's fine. When I get inquiries like this, I always call my dad. The reason I call my dad is because he has been self-employed for about 24 years. All my life my dad has been self-employed, so he knows his shit too. And he has a lot of business sense. In this case, I actually called him straight away and I said, I just got an inquiry from this dude and la 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 la, what do you think? And he said, give me the business name. And immediately he was looking up their ABN to see if it was a legitimate business. An ABN here is an Australian business number. I think that's the official title. If you are an operating business, you legally have to have one, and this dude didn't, which made me completely go red flag crazy, because that means they don't pay tax necessarily sometimes. They probably don't have to legally pay their employees or by legal Australian standards and things like that. I have an ABN as a freelance illustrator. This had been around for about 4 years and didn't have an ABN. Really set some alarm bells off for me. The other question I tend to ask is, will they meet your terms? In my case, that was a solid no, because I wasn't interested in the opportunity. But that's a good question to ask. Will they let you select half paid installments, which is what I tend to do with my commission. I request that they pay 50% upon the final draft and then 50% upon the final completion of the artwork, so I'm getting paid consistently. That's the sort of stuff you want to look out for, stuff that they will be flexible with. Another thing is to probably know your terms. That took me a long time to learn as well, and as I said before, it's just a matter of practice. If they use the word exposure, it just means bullshit. Don't fall for that. Do not let exposure become this great thing you don't. You have social media, you have a plethora of other tools. Don't accept exposure as their best offer. Are they offering to print for you? This sets off such big alarm bells for me, because that tends to mean, especially if you're a newcomer, that they are going to get a soft copy of your illustration, which means they can reproduce it however they want. And that scares the living shit out of me, because I want to know where my illustration is and who it's credited to and why it's being printed. So that also immediately sets off alarm bells. Yeah, all that stuff. Valid red flags. I'm sure there are 100 other things that you might pick up and notice, but those are just the ones off the top of my head that came to me as I saw this email. I'm going to go into why I said no to this specific client, and then I'm going to just sort of tell you how to do it politely and what reasons might warrant you saying no. In this specific case, the guy in question, he was very, very nice, very flattering towards my work, but a few things didn't match up. First off, the ABN, as I mentioned, that is really important to me. If I am going to be doing something for someone who is advertising themselves as a business, they have to be a legitimate business. I don't want to be doing work for someone who is going to overorder and then not make a sale. And from this specific experience, they didn't have a website, so I looked at their Facebook and they had 3 or 4 years worth of content on there, and it was the same product for the last 4 years, exactly the same contents, exactly the same everything being advertised. It only had about 30 people that liked it, and I know that's a really trivial thing to get hung up on, but if I'm going to be putting something that I dedicated my heart and soul into and printing a back order for this random guy that I've never heard of before in this company I've never heard of before, I want to make sure people are going to see it. I want to make sure that there's actually going to be some sort of reward aside from money in this. And in this case, there wasn't. I checked his Twitter too, and it was like 20 followers, so I immediately was like, he doesn't market this very well, and that's an issue for me, because if people are going to see it, I have a big social media presence with what I do. Like, I make an effort to be on social media regularly. The people I'm working with kind of need to do the same in some cases, not necessarily with private commissions or anything like that, but when you're a business, it kind of makes sense to be social media savvy. So that immediately turned me off. Another thing that really turned me off was, at first he wanted to do a 10 to 20 trial print of my work. He didn't mention any budget, he didn't mention anything, he just asked for a wholesale price, which basically meant I want it cheaper than what you currently sell it for. And that is not the point of my zine. The zine that I am currently selling and discussing with you is something that I print to order, essentially. I think I have 5 as a backstock, and I sell 10 of them at Sticky Institute. So I'm assuming that he got his hands on one from Sticky Institute, because I have no record of it on my Etsy shop. And I just, I had a feeling that if I printed 20, it could go out of hand. He also mentioned that if it did well, he would want 150. I don't have time to print 150 zines for that really turned me off was he had clearly copied and pasted the email and just chucked in the name of my zine and some flattering comments at the very start, because at one point he mentioned a different product and I was like, I don't know what that is, but I assume he meant to just paste my zine's name in there, so nope. If you're gonna, you know, mass email people, that's fine, but do it properly, mate. He also, upon my response and my polite decline, which I'll go into in a sec, he offered some other options for me. He offered to print my zine on demand for me because I said to him that I am not in the position to currently print in mass, and he generously offered to have a soft copy of it and print by my own personal standards. And that may sound like a great opportunity, but for me, as someone who put a lot of effort into this and is terrified of someone stealing my copyright or, you know, stealing my intellectual rights and property, I immediately went, fuck no, you are not getting a hold of my zine. No way, no day, buddy. And yeah, look, as I said, I could be sounding crazy cynical here, and you might be thinking you just missed such a fantastic opportunity. You know what, if that's the case, I'll live. There are going to be so many other opportunities that I am going to put myself out there for, but this did not feel right for me, and you will know that, you will feel that in your gut. I hate to sound so like airy-fairy and emotive, but hey, I'm an INFJ and an Enneagram 4. If I'm gonna be emotive, I'm gonna be emotive, it's just my way. But yeah, as soon as I read the email, I saw the title and I got really excited, like my heart was like elated. And then I read it and my heart dropped to the pit of my stomach. That's a pretty clear indicator for me that something is not right and that I am not made to do this thing. He kept mentioning this website that wasn't existent yet. He kept saying, oh, you know, another opportunity is that we could set it up so it's something people can add to their cart on the website and they can build their own boxes. And it sounded like he had all these fantastic ideas, but he hadn't been doing it. And I get it, like if you're marketing something, it takes time to really have the money to set it up and whatever. As I said, I had very little information, and based on the information that he gave me, I wasn't too interested in finding out more. After I had told him, no thank you, no thank you, I am very busy, I'm sorry, I can't do this, he was like, well, why don't we get a coffee? And I just had to eventually say, look, I'm very sorry, but no, I have too many prior commitments in the foreseeable future, and nah buddy. That's just some of the stuff that you might face. You might face people who are making these amazing offers to you, and you might feel guilty. I felt guilty, and it's not because I particularly liked that guy or because I owed him anything. It was just because I get it. I've put myself out there so many times and contacted publishers, I've contacted magazines, I've contacted bloggers, I've contacted so many people, and I've said, look, I'm an illustrator and I would really love the opportunity to work with you, and they've just been like, nah, we have illustrators, or no, we're not interested, and it sucks. It sucks a lot. So I 100% sympathize with him, but at the same time, it's my own business and I have to think about myself, and you should do the same. If anything strikes you as like strange, or you're not sure, or you feel uncomfortable, don't do it, because it will immediately show if you're doing like a piece for someone that you are uncomfortable or that you are not happy making this work. It immediately shows, I promise you. Now that you have an extensive example of a commission or an inquiry that was deemed turned downable by my own personal standards, nothing against the company, nothing against the guy like personally, nothing against anything ever, just for me, didn't make a whole lot of sense and didn't feel right. Now you can kind of do that too. These are some things that I have said no to in the past that might be something that resonates with you or might be something to look out for. Any use of the word exposure. Run away from the word exposure. That means we're not going to pay you. Internships as well, they're questionable. I did an internship a while ago. It was for a social media manager position, and I was overloaded with work that I didn't give a shit about, and then my illustration work fell into that as well. If you think it's really going to help your career, go for it, do what you got to do. But for me, it's just, no, not worth it. As I said before, lacking in social media presence, probably an issue, or lacking in a website with any real information, also an issue. No real budget. This is something I totally could have inquired a bit further on regarding that specific inquiry, but I didn't want to because I was already unhappy with a lot of the information that was provided to me. If someone is presenting you with an opportunity and they don't tell you like what their budget is, ask. Say to them, what kind of budget did you have in mind? Especially if they're using the exposure word and you dare to venture on with that inquiry or commission. Ask about a budget. It makes a hell of a difference. And also ask about a timeline if they don't give you anything. A lot of the time, businesses and sometimes individuals will expect you to drop everything and just do the thing they ask you to immediately because you're a desperate, starving artist. You're better than being a desperate, starving artist. Trust me on this. Make them wait. That sounds horrible. I don't mean like make them wait. They have to be like worthy of you or anything like that, but to an extent you do have to know your worth, as we've said. So remember that knowing your worth means knowing that your time is valuable. Okay, let's say that you do an illustration that takes you 6 hours and this company sees it and they love it, and you work 5 days a week and they email you on a Monday and want that illustration by Wednesday. That's not cool. And that's something you can discuss with them and say, hey, I can't do that. Let's make another arrangement, or can we do this in a different way? And it's about just having a conversation. It's about talking to people, which I know as illustrators we like to hide in our little desks and burrows and things like that and not talk to people, but you do have to ask the questions sometimes, especially regarding budget and timelines. Do that because you'll save yourself so much stress, and sometimes even put more time into the time frame than you actually need. I do that a lot with commissions because that way it means I get it right. Offering to print for you, I've said this before, I'll say it again, terrifying, terrifying, terrifying. Run for the hills if you can. If it seems like a legitimate thing and they have all the proper like contracts and terms that are agreeable and genuine, go for it, but really read that over, like really be careful with that one. As I said before, if they contact you and they address your work with the wrong name, or they address you with the wrong name, which has also happened to me before, might not be worth your time. I say that because they are obviously contacting other people as well. So they're not looking at you individually and directly. They haven't taken the time to really read over their emails. They are sending this out in mass. Another thing is if they're asking you for money, run. I have had so many emails from savvy business people in Melbourne telling me about this amazing new artist space and that I only have to pay $75 a week to work collaboratively with a bunch of other young, hip, upcoming artists. Don't ploy into that. If you are finding that you have to work a job to do what you love to do anyway, it is not worth your money or your time to be paying someone else to let you use a desk. You pay enough money to live in an apartment or with your parents or pay for gas or Netflix. Don't ploy into that stuff unless you really think it will be valuable to you. If they're flattering but vague, it's probably a very generic email. That's something I have written. It is something I have experienced, and keep your eyes out for it, because if they're like, oh, your work is so lovely, that's great, but what specifically about my work is lovely? Are you just saying that to all the girls? Promises and no info on the business is another issue. Just like that guy I told you about. Amazing things coming up, you know, like, oh man, this website's going to be incredible. It's going to be so many opportunities. Yeah, but why hasn't it been in practice for the last 4 years? Why hasn't your social media been used as a tool? Things like that are red flags. Does this commission or inquiry get you excited? For me, 9 times out of 10, I have to be excited about a commission or an inquiry, because otherwise my heart and soul is not going to be in the work and it's going to show. I have taken on commissions before that I just did for the money and it was not worth it. And the client, you know, was nice about it usually, but I hated it and I didn't want it on my folio. I didn't want it anywhere. I never wanted to see it again. I didn't want to sign my name to it. Be very aware of that. I guess the best thing to say is always aim to do your best. And if that's something that you find challenging with commissions, then cool, make your own zines or make your own prints and sell them online and market the shit out of yourself and do events. That way people are seeing work that you loved to make and they'll probably commission you to do things that you will love to make. A few final points to make to finish this video up. I have mentioned Dan Berry before. He is an amazing comic artist and educator. He's actually a teacher at a university. And yeah, he teaches comics. Very cool. He has a podcast called Make It Then Tell Everybody. I will link that below as well. He has a theory that if someone asks you to do work for them, it should hit 2 of 3 points, and he has like this little triangle thing, which I will leave here. And basically it needs to either make you money, be useful, or be fun. And I love that principle. Ideally it would be all 3. If it's all 3, you have the most amazing commission ever. But if it hits 2, that's great. And it can be scary if there's a commission that you are excited about but doesn't earn you any money. Sometimes it is worth doing those things. I know when I did my internship, I was asked to design a poster, and I was elated that I had even been given the opportunity to do it. In retrospect, I'm pissed that I didn't ask for money. But in my defense, they were a not-for-profit, which I know isn't an excuse. But yeah, at the time I just didn't feel right about asking for money, and it was still an amazing example of what I could do for a business, and I was having fun, and it was useful. That poster got put up in schools around the US, the UK, Europe, and Australia, so that was awesome. There are plenty of opportunities for you to put yourself out there and to take on commissions and projects. And as I said, don't be afraid to contact people. I send so many emails to people that I would love to work with, and sometimes it works out in my favor, and sometimes I get a big fat no, and that's fine. It helps you build character, and it helps you just learn to be a bit tougher in the industry. My final thing is, remember what you're working towards. If you want to be an editorial illustrator, you do not have to paint fabric designs. There's stuff like that, just really simple stuff. Just keep it easy, keep doing what you like, and work on your craft before you worry about working for someone else. I feel like that got a little bit cynical in some parts. I don't mean to be cynical like completely, guys, but you've got to remember that this is something that is coming from you and that you are passionate about, and you really need to not only like be proud of your work and enjoy it, but you need to be careful. You need to be aware that not everyone is going to be nice, and not everyone is going to like your work, and not everyone is thinking of your best interests at heart. I should know. I have dealt with that. Thank you so much for watching this. I am sure it was far too long, but hey, that's what these monthly things are for, right? If there is anything you would like me to discuss further or anything, leave it in the comments. I would love to know. Thank you especially to my patrons. I friggin' love you guys. Seriously, I know that I am a small YouTuber and I am a small illustrator, but you guys are such a big deal to me. Like, it is so cool to know that people like my work and want to support me, and that they do. It's amazing. So thank you, thank you. If you're not a patron, you totally can be. I'm not going to force you or anything. My fridge, however, is making some vaguely threatening noises. I upload my videos early so my patrons get to see it. I also do bi-weekly podcasts where I talk about what I've been working on and what's just been happening in my world. My patrons know a lot, so I strongly suggest you chat with them or just chat with me on there and join the community. I will see you guys next week with another illustration video. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope this was informative and not too bitchy. Side note, if you made it this far in the video, I guess it's time to just face fact and admit that I spent the whole time in Walmart pajama pants, and I am kind of sweaty, but I've never been so comfortable in my life. Okay. Thanks again for watching, guys. Yeah. Bye!